Ныне праздник всех святых земли российских потерявших, всех святых, которых возрастила русская церковь, русская земля. Ныне праздник духовного неба над Россией, где широко простирается это небо. От святого князя Владимира, божественной княгини российской Ольги, которые были как бы корнем всех святых земли российских приявших. Великий сон возрас, великое древо святости. Правда, еще и до великого князя Владимира были святые прежде присягавшие там, где ныне земля русская. Те части, которые ныне составляют также пределы России, и сияются еще, и прежде того, как они вошли в состав земли российской, есть святыми угодниками Божьими. Вот Херсонес славится 7 епископами, еще в первые времена посвящавшему свой край. Там же впоследствии Киев-Мефодий проповедали это немощные святого Климента Папы Римского. Там впоследствии в том же Казанете крестился великий князь Владимир. И с мощами древнего священномученика Римского он пришел в Киев, положил тем начало возрастанию церкви русской.
God makes saints. There are a lot of saints we don't know about. Certain ones God reveals to the world, others He doesn't. And when the church proclaims someone a saint, is that what the church is saying is that this person has special grace from God, where he can, intercede for us. But most importantly is that this person can serve as an example for us. Vladika was born in Malorossia, or what is known today as the Ukraine, in 1896. He came from a very prominent family, landed gentry, and his ancestors came from Serbia. They left Serbia during the Turkish yoke. The last name of the family was Maksimovic, and one of the members of the family was a bishop in the Russian Church, Saint John Maksimovic, the Metropolitan of Tobolsk and all Siberia. He was canonized in 1916. Vladika's sister, Maria Lubarskaya, corresponded with my mother, and she once wrote that Vladika was a very obedient child, and the parents had no problems with his upbringing. He was an excellent pupil in school, a cadet, and he didn't like just 2 subjects, dancing and gym class. I was told that as a child, Vladika had toy soldiers that he played with, but he did not play military games. He played a monastery. In baptism, Vladika received the name of Michael. He received his education at the Poltava Military Corps, and after that he finished the Kharkiv University Law School. He was planning, apparently, a career in law, but the Russian Revolution forced the family to leave, and they ended up in Yugoslavia. Vladika entered the theological faculty of the University of Belgrade, which he completed. After graduation from the theological faculty, Vladika took the monastic vows, and he received the name of John in memory of his ancestor, Metropolitan John of Tobolsk and Siberia. Vladika knew Metropolitan Antony from Russia. He was a bishop in Kharkiv at one time, but he became closely associated and got to know Metropolitan Antony closer in Yugoslavia. And Metropolitan Antony was once asked, who spiritually you feel closest to? And he named just two people, Archimandrit Ambrosii, the abbot of Milkov Monastery, and then the young hieromonk John. After Vladika was ordained hieromonk, he was sent to the Bogoslovia in Betel. Bogoslovia would be something similar to our seminary, where he taught. I visited Betel in 1978 or 79 with a group of Serbian students, and the priests there still remembered their instructor, Otec Jovan.
Even in the time when St. John was in Belgrade as a young hieromonk, he was already, by people who knew him very well, recognized as being a very holy man. And when a certain Serbian bishop had been asked the question, do saints exist in our day? He said, go to Bitol, where hieromonk John was a teacher in the Serbian seminary, and go look at him and you will see a living saint.
It was from Betel that Vladika was called to Belgrade and informed by Metropolitan Antony that he was elected to be Bishop of Shanghai.
The cathedral, born actually across the kitty corner from the cathedral, lived before the war 2 blocks from the cathedral, a place called Berden Terrace. That was almost any Russian that you talked to from Shanghai was either lived in Berden Terrace or somewhere near the cathedral. The main street by the cathedral was Paul Henry, small street, residential street, beautiful trees around it. And it was really, although it was the French concession, you saw Russians just all over.
Vladika knew my family from Shanghai. My parents met in Shanghai, were married there. My two older brothers were born in Shanghai. My twin brother and I, we were born in San Francisco. So I knew about Vladika from my childhood. When Vladika arrived in Shanghai, he noticed the many children, orphans or not, but who were homeless.
Vladika loved children. He started an orphanage called Tsikhanezadonsky.
Altogether, almost 2,000 children had passed through the orphanage. Some for maybe just a few days or weeks, others for a few years, but on the whole, he himself told me almost 2,000 children.
When we were young, we used to think we saw a night ghost, as we saw a shadow moving in the dark. Only find out later that was our Bishop John checking on us. He wanted to check how every child was. He visited our rooms and blessed all of us with his hand cross. Bishop John also would inquire from our caregivers to see how everyone was. Our Saint John might have been short in stature, but to me, he did not give impression of being small. He was a swift walker. When he came into the room, he stood out, and everyone felt drawing toward him. He had a pleasant baritone voice with attentive, bright, kind look in his eyes. He had smiles for children and adults. He did not eat much, I remember, but his hands, I often wondered that they were not bony like you would have expected. His hands were nice and soft as we kissed him. The important one thing he installed in all his children was to learn early by heart, morning and evening and few other prayers, and still we are well into our old age, say our holy prayers to our heart, flowing easily with his blessing.
One day, it was Chinese New Year. It was snowing outside. I was fortunate. I was living in Archierecký dom, and I was going upstairs. I lived on 3rd floor. On the 2nd floor, Vladika Young opened the door. He says, "What will you be doing?" I said, "Nothing." He says, "You want to go with me to the Red Cross?" Because one of the boy from orphanage was found in the street, and the Red Cross hospital. So Vladika and I, we went there, snowing, to the Red Cross, walking to его причастить, because he was sick.
Give him communion.
Give him the communion, yes.
Первый раз я встретил Владыки Яна, это было в Шанхае в 1934 году. У меня даже есть карточку, я хочу вам показать. Вот где я. Мне было 2 года.
Вот так наклоните чуть-чуть.
2 года мне. Это мой отец. Конечно, это святой Ян. Вот я хочу про мою семью рассказать вам. Как мы приняли православие в Шанхае, в Китае. Моя прабабушка Ирина приняла православие. Также и мой дедушка Серафим, и мой отец Иона. И, конечно, мы все приняли православие. Папа был военный человек. И он боролся с японцами, когда во время оккупации, и боролся с коммунистами. Японцы пришли в 1937 году в Шанхай. А когда его арестовали, положили в тюрьму, тогда Владыка Ян меня принял в приют.
В котором году это было?
Это было в 1943-1944 году. Когда война закончилась, в 1945-м я приехал обратно домой. А когда уже китайские коммунисты пришли, надо Отец мой снова положил приют.
At that time, everybody was scrambling to get out. We were lucky enough to go to Japan. My grandfather lived in Japan. He's a priest, was a priest. The others, with Bishop John, like about 5,000 went. Bishop John, had all the negotiations to allow that to happen, and about 5,000 people went to live in Tubabao, Philippines.
Там проходило время, когда тайфуны, и тогда все филиппинцы уходили с острова, а мы оставались. Сильные ливни, но таких сильных нет. Только как мы выехали до одного православного, там все перевернуло. Трубы, которые провели, все пропало. А пока мы были там, пока владыка благословлял, и филиппинцы сами говорили, что вот пока ваш ходит, вот этот монах, ходит и благословляет на все 4 стороны, все в порядке, все спокойно будет, да.
He promised that everybody would leave the Philippines, and he did fulfill his promise. Some people went to Australia, some people went to South America. There was a lot of people that were basically homeless. Vladika would come to the United States, would sit on the steps of the Senate, United States Senate, and one senator noticed that there is this man sitting there with a long beard and everything, and he came up to him, and Vladika said, "This is the problem. We need to get these people out of the Philippines, out of Tubabao."
And Vladika went to Washington to lobby that a bill be passed to allow the people from Tubabao, from the Philippines, to enter the United States.
At first, they didn't pay any attention to him, but he kept sitting there on the steps. He sat there for 2 or 3 days.
He wrote letters asking for, prominent people in Washington to support this, to lobby on his behalf, and but mostly I think it was his prayers.
Finally, the question of bringing Russians to the United States was conquered by Vladika and his prayers, that the United States Senate opened up visas or passports or whatever it was, and there was quite a few Russians that came to the United States.
Православие, правая вера, она есть на землю самим Сыном Божьим. И вот, перед тем торжеством причиняются и другие преступления, когда мы совершаем здесь служение. Как раз когда начался Великий пост, который призывает нас к покаянию в грехах наших. Радуется сердце наше этому новому храму. Он еще не закончен. Еще нет дням священных изображений, почитать которые христиане начали от первых дней, почитание которых было утверждено как раз тем событием, которое празднуется завтра.
Then Vladika went to Paris after that, and he was the ruling bishop of Paris for a while Then when the turmoil in San Francisco started with the building of the new cathedral, it was decided that Vladika would be appointed to San Francisco.
Vladika was officially assigned to San Francisco in 1963, in late spring, after Vladika Tikhon repose.
When I finished the university as an engineer, that was the time that Bishop John was sent over here to settle things down and to complete the construction of the cathedral. And as soon as I finished the university, he assigned me to the construction committee and also to the Prihaskoy Sovet, parish council.
The cathedral was a skeletal structure of I-beams, and it stood for approximately, as I remember, about 5 or 6 years without any concrete on it. Had it gone another year or two, the I-beams would have had to been replaced, taken down, and started all over again. Vladika had prayed, and miraculously, the cathedral started to be built. He blessed the grounds. We had a big processional from Priut, which is Chikhanazadonsky on 15th and Balboa, and we went down 15th Avenue to Anza to 26th to Gary, and there was a Molebin served there, and I would say there was at least 1,500 people in the processional. That was one of the things that was probably his first miracle in San Francisco that was really, I thought, was most noteworthy.
Looking back at my 40-plus years of business and development, he was by far one of the best administrators that I have ever known, from the standpoint of how he could manage the various committees, how he could manage various projects, how he managed people, and of course his management style came from the love of people.
People, in San Francisco always talk very highly of Vladika John, and always, could not do more to him. It's interesting that when people tried to give him money, as my parents, if they had extra, they would try to give money, but they learned very fast. If you tried to give money to Vladika Jan, he would say, "No, I have no needs." What you had to do was tell him, "For your needs." He had many needs of the Priud, the orphanage, and he helped other people. So he didn't have needs, and if you told him that it's for your needs, he would take that and bless you.
He would always never refuse help to anyone, be it personal help, be it in any other way, and so people would respond to him like I've never known anybody to respond to anyone.
Vladika loved children very much, and he loved everyone. But children, I think, especially because the purity of their heart, not spoiled yet by life.
Vladika loved kids. Kids flew to him. They swam to him. He just adored kids, and the kids adored Vladika.
He realized the need for the Russian youth to socialize. Once, after a liturgy, he asked us what we were planning to do, and the altar boy said they want to go see a film. And he asked, what's the name of the film? And then he gave money to all the altar boys that wanted to go to buy the ticket.
When Vladika came, I started serving as an altar boy it was still at the old cathedral on Fulton, and one of the things is Vladika would always tap us on the head with a posach, his staff. If Vladika didn't tap you on the head with his staff, that means you were in trouble. You were in real trouble. I've been in trouble. I know. You feel like nothing.
Growing up, I remember several times that we would go to the bishop, say before our some exam, and you didn't study, and you think, okay, you're going to go and get the bishop's blessing because you're going to have a math test or whatever kind of exam you're going to go into. Well, the bishop knew that if you didn't study, he would get really upset. He said, why do you come to me for a blessing? You're not, you didn't study. I'm not going to give you a blessing. Well, in that case, you knew you didn't study and you didn't get bishop's blessing. You knew you were cooked. But this, when the bishop gave us the blessing for our marriage, I knew, conversely from my other experiences of trying to get his blessing when I didn't study, but this was okay. Everything was going to be fine. And it's really turned out that way.
43 years.
Yeah, 43 years now. So.
Vladika's day began very early. He would rise to read his prayers. He served liturgy every single day, either at his residence, the orphanage of St. Tikhon, or in the cathedral in San Francisco. At 3 o'clock every day, we would read the 9th hour. Having come home, he would tend to his duties. He received many, many letters every day, and he answered them always personally. He would have a light snack with coffee in the evenings, and then he would either at the priut, at the orphanage, or again at the cathedral, go for the Vesper service. If he served at the cathedral, or actually if he was present at the cathedral, on the way home he would stop at the hospital again. He would have supper very late, at either 11:30 or during summer months, during daylight of time at 12:30, and then he would retire after that. Since the day of his monastic tonsure, he did not sleep in the bed. He slept in an armchair.
He gave up sleeping in a bed for the 44 years he was a monk. He gave up that incredible, normal thing in our lives of sleeping in the bed just to keep himself under his control, to break his own will.
Vladika was very humble in his personal life, but in church, he was a prince of the church. He was very cautious that the episcopal dignity be properly represented. Vladika was very strict with clergy, demanding that it was regardless whether it was monastic or white clergy, that they diligently performed their duties.
I'll tell you one thing, when Vladika served and you were in the altar, it was like you were not on earth.
Vladika lived in another world. He lived in the world of prayer, contemplation, constant communion with God. Vladika knew the lives of saints. To me it seemed like he knew all of them. I don't know if he knew, but anyway. But when Vladika was in church and approaching an icon, it wasn't something, at least my impression was, that it wasn't something, you know, far-fetched for him. It was as if we would approach, you know, maybe, or look at a family album. All the saints were someone he knew.
I was born October the 5th, 1947 at 11:55 p.m. Prior to this, my mother was Catholic. My mother was dying of typhus fever in Shanghai. Archbishop John used to visit hospitals on a daily basis, and he read what patients were in the hospital, specifically looking for Russian names. My mother was literally on her deathbed, and Archbishop John came to a Catholic person, not Orthodox, and prayed with my mother, and the next morning my mother got up and walked out of the hospital on their own. The doctors and nurses had said my mother was going to die tomorrow morning.
My wife got sick about a little bit over 3 years ago with colon cancer. And in fact, we were supposed to go on a trip to Shanghai. We canceled that immediately. And first thing we did was serve a Moleben in front of Bishop John's relics. And 3 days later, she had the operation. The operation was successful. And it's been 3 years, going on the 4th now, and everything is fine.
В сентябре 1993 года мой сын Всеволод заболел, что-то было необычное, мы обратились к доктору, доктор послал на особые исследования, и оказалось, что у него нефрит.
I think it was, I forgot in which convent, one of the doctor, they was operating on the abbess or the priest over there. And then when they finished the operation, the chief surgeon told the abbess, he says, hey, you should keep your monks out of the operation room. Abbess, nobody's in there. Oh yes, that one. Point out the little young's picture. That one, he was inside the operation room.
You know, people ask if miracles do occur, they do.
Сыну было меньше 2 лет, И эта болезнь вообще, когда бывает, появляется где-то в возрасте 4 лет. Это было необычно и довольно сильно высказывалось. Ему начали давать довольно сильные лекарства, и лекарства никак не помогали. В это время моя супруга услыхала, что как будто собираются открывать мощи святителя Иоанна. Но это только шли слухи. Мы получили эти слухи с западного побережья, но мы здесь ничего не слыхали. Матушка меня попросила: позвони владыке Антонию и спроси, что происходит. Я позвонил владыке Антонию. Владыка Антоний говорит: ничего такого мы не слыхали, ничего такого здесь нет, не происходит.
I was just talking to her and she noticed something, a bump. It didn't look right. And of course I went to the mirror and looked, and it was quite large and scared me, of course. And I called Sv.Vmc on the phone and told him that something's wrong, which is my husband. And told him that I need to get this looked at right away. Monday I went. First thing I did, of course, was put Vladikayan oil on it.
Я помню, это было воскресенье, уже в октябре. Лекарства все еще не помогают, дают сыну, вот еще нету 2 лет сыну, а дают ему дозы этого сильного лекарства, которые уже взрослым людям должны помочь, а ему никак не помогают. И я помню, было воскресенье, я звоню владыке, и владыка говорит: нет, ничего не будет. Ну, я так и передал матушке, и вот идет следующий день, понедельник, я хорошо помню сейчас, это был понедельник, так после обеда звонит владыка. Матушка моя была на работе, я был дома с 2 детьми, и звонит мне владыка и говорит: привози ребенка. Я тогда был в Монтерее, это 2 часа на юг от Сан-Франциско. Приезжаю я к вечеру в Сан-Франциско, и владыка мне сказал: отправляйся к отцу диакону, к отцу Алексею, и жди. Уже поздно ночью, где-то, может быть, около часу ночи, ко мне приходит отец Алексей и говорит: бери ребенка и пошли. И я взял ребенка и пошел. Когда, значит, я вошел в усыпальницу, значит, все духовенство, которое собралось там, пропело Ектенью о здравии. И когда пропели Ектенью, тогда владыка Антоний мне сказал приложить ребенка к мощам святителя Иоанна. Я приложил ребенка к мощам, стали через неделю уменьшать дозы, и значит, показатели уже начали хорошо совершенно, показали, что почки пришли в свое нормальное состояние, и через приблизительно месяц уже совершенно убрали лекарства.
They decided to just go in and take it out. They didn't know what it was. And of course, we had him given to St. John, and I went to communion, and the next day just went and did it. And I put my faith in him.
И мы за все благодарим Господа Бога и заступничество святителя Иоанна.
He always adheres us and always intercedes in some way, whichever way it's supposed to work out. For the good, for the bad, and usually it works out for the good.
Vladika died July 2nd of 1966 in Seattle. He had left a few days earlier by car with Vladika Nektari, and I was supposed to go with him, but at the last minute I changed my mind because I decided I wanted to visit my brother, and to this day I regret that decision. On the way to Seattle, Vladika served liturgy in the homes where he stayed overnight, and he arrived in Seattle he served liturgy that Saturday morning, and Отец Andrei Nakonechny went with the icon to visit some of the Kursk icon to visit some of the parishioners, and Vladika had lunch with the widow of the former priest there, and was going to go to the cemetery. And two of the parishioners whom he had known earlier were waiting for him downstairs. He went upstairs to get his things, and they heard a fall. And something falling, something heavy falling. When they ran up, they saw Vladika trying to get up. Vladika had fallen, and he said that nothing of a kind has ever happened to him. They sat him down in his chair, and he was sitting there silently, and then he started grasping for air and passed away. That day, my brother and I flew from San Francisco to Seattle with Vladika's Easter vestments. Vladika and Nektari and I, we prepared Vladika, just the two of us, for a monastic burial, and we vested him, the two of us, we vested him in the pontifical vestments, and then when everything was ready, we laid him in the coffin. And in the early afternoon, we flew from Seattle to San Francisco with Vladika's remains. The burial took place on Thursday. Vladika laid in state at the cathedral all those days. San Francisco does not get hot during the summer months, but the cathedral was full every day, so it was warm, and Vladika's remains did not show any signs of decay. Before leaving for Seattle, Vladika, in my presence, called the Russian newspaper in San Francisco, Russkaya Жизнь, and ordered an announcement in the paper that on June 24th, July 7th, is the feast of St. John the Baptist, the Nativity of St. John, and there would be a very festive service at the cathedral. That announcement was never printed because Vladika died, and all the announcements were about, the schedule of the services and his funeral. But I remember calling the office of the newspaper and saying that there will be a festive service on the Nativity of St. John.
was one of those who was blessed to be a witness of the opening of the relics of our Holy Father among the Saints, John of Shanghai and San Francisco, in October of 1993.
When the sarcophagus was open for examination before the glorification of St. John, it took place in two parts. The first part was to examine that there were holy relics for veneration, and they were put into a new wooden casket, and the second time they were open, and then the holy relics were revested into the vestments that they're in now.
Before the archpastors arrived, the priests began to read the gospel over the relics of the saint, and when they did arrive, we served a full panihida, after which His Grace Archbishop Anthony blessed, at that time, Father Peter Lukianov, who is now, of course, His Grace Bishop Peter of Cleveland, to open the casket.
The original metal coffin had rusted through in some parts. We couldn't open the lid. We had to pry it open.
It was Father George Kurtov and myself who had actually discovered a way to kind of snap one of the hinges, which had also rusted through, and actually begin to open up the lid of the casket, at which point we notified the Archbishop of this, and he stopped everyone from what they were doing and had us all stand piously and wait that moment, and with his blessings we opened up the casket and discovered the incorrupt relics of the saint.
And the very moment of opening of the and examining of the remains is probably the most phenomenal moment of my life, really, to see that for the first time.
Well, Dick, you could see that the body was dehydrated, and it was covered with I really don't know what, but a layer of some white, it was almost like dust. That was at the second opening that all this, the relics were washed, but otherwise they were intact, completely intact.
When we began to sort of work, if you will, on the relics, to clean off some of the rust and some of the material, we peeled it off from the relics. Archbishop Anthony then removed the air that was covering the face of the saint, and there he was, incorrupt and very recognizable. His hair, his beard, his fingernails, the blood vessels on his fingers were visible and noticeable. And as we began to sweep off rust and so forth from the various parts of the body, nothing fell apart. It was quite amazing. And with great piety and with a significant amount of trepidation, we approached this effort. Upon completion of the preparation of the relics, taking off all of the stuff that had fallen off of the casket and so forth, cleaning them up, Vladika Anthony had pulled out a clean one which had been prepared earlier. We removed the relics from the casket and put it into a temporary casket which Father George Kurtov had prepared beforehand, and we closed the casket, and Vladika Anthony sealed it, and we put it back into the sepulcher and closed it back up. We prayed again around the relics of the saints before we all departed, but it's impossible to really express the feelings that we all experienced. After we left the sepulcher that evening, none of us who were there could calm down, if you will. It was a feeling of such piety, of such blessedness, of such grace. What we had witnessed that evening is beyond description. Personally, it was a very important moment for me, as I was one of only 6 who were present that evening in 1993, who were present at the funeral services for Vladika John back in 1966. I was only a 12-year-old boy then, holding the staff of Archbishop Sava, and I recall late at night when they were about to close the casket and put it into the sepulchre, I didn't make it in time to venerate the relics one last time. And I stood there by the closed casket and I whispered a small prayer that God would grant to me to live to see the day where we would reopen this casket and that I might be there. And 28 years later, God granted the wish of His unworthy servant.
Also, we orphans would remember how some older people in church would call our Archbishop John, Bishop St. John. And we children wondered why they call him Saint. In church, at the end of the service, he would tell us all these wonderful sermons, stories about the saints that celebrated that day. How we loved to hear him, as he could do it so vividly, all about each of them. He knew the year they lived, martyred, fell asleep. It all sounded like it happened yesterday.
It's a spiritual journey that a person goes on and continues through his life probably from the earliest conscious acceptance of life according to God's commandments, and really striving to fulfill those commandments, the commandment of love of God and love of fellow man.
We, I think, who knew him in his life, knew he was a saint. How he would, for example, first of all, as I said, would pray. Then how he would care for people. How he would set up hospitals, how he would set up schools, how he would set up orphanages, how he brought the orphanage when it was absolutely impossible from the Tubabawa here.
To know him was to love him, and to love him is we still have to love him, and we need to pray to him to intercede for us. And he does intercede for us. Whether we know it or not, he does intercede for us.
The fact that he was very down to earth, I think this shows that you don't have to walk on water to be a saint. Just live the life of the church, believe in the church, do your prayers, confess your sins, have communion. I think just the opposite, that a person who's a human being, as we all are, a person with certain weaknesses, with certain maybe even minor faults, but a person just as us, the sanctity is achievable.
Христаеве, сиди Твой, чтобы не забыли в наше сердце злоба и недоброжелательство, чтобы страсти, похоти не одолевали нас. Извиняйтесь из всякой злые мысли из нашего сердца. И взывайте Твою песню, которая поется в конце Великого Поста. Через Бог, кто вижу, спас мой, украши зло, я держи во мне. Но все день мой свидолавчий, помилуй меня.